Hello, welcome to my presentation on TikTok. The content of my presentation is essentially data privacy concerns and the upcoming ban on this app. So, as an overview, we know TikTok is a video sharing platform that is owned by ByteDance. That's a Beijing-based company. It is used mostly to create short videos, lip syncs, comedies, talent videos, and so on. So the users can upload videos that are typically 15 seconds long, and they can loop to restart. They can connect clips, stitch them together to create videos up to 60 seconds long. And these videos incorporate music samples, filters, quick cuts, stickers, other creative add-ons that allow users to make the most of their short-length videos. So we also have to look at, as part of the overview, the CEO, Shou Zi. He grew up in the Chinese province of Anhui, and he studied civil engineering in Eastern China, and he moved to the US. He worked at SAP, the German software company. Now, he has gone to great lengths to study the young audience, sometimes really young audience, and how they use the social media, right? The social media usage of this young audience. Now, their estimated user base in the US is more than 150 million people. It's used by almost 5 million businesses. That's revealed by the TikTok last month. Some of the TikTok stars make up to $5 million per year on this platform. Now, globally, these users spend an average 95 minutes per day on this platform. That's nearly twice as much time they spent on FB and Instagram. Now, their rivals include like Netflix, YouTube Shorts, Snapchat, FB, Instagram Reels. Now, they have more than 150 billion downloads in worldwide and operate in content in 75 different languages. Now, the usage of TikTok really took off in the early 2020 during the pandemic. And it's in the first quarter of 2020, the TikTok amassed more than 315 million installs, including Apple iStore and the Google Play. That's more than any other app in one single quarter. Now, coming to the ad revenues, in the US, it is expected to reach 6.83 billion this year, 2023. That's up 780 million. Last year, that's almost 2020. So from 2020, it's been a 10 times increase, they reported. Now, TikTok has 700 employees in the US as of March 2023. 7,000 employees as of last month. Now, looking at their impact on the youngsters, right? Nearly half of them are aged between 16 and 24, the user base. And there is a potential to create toxic environment that breeds narrow thinking, herd mentality, increased peer pressure. So there are reports of like concerns about the mental health of youngsters, and they say it can potentially push harmful content that leads to suicide and eating disorders in teenagers. So it's already quite difficult to distinguish between what is fake and what is real on social media. That's been an issue, and it applies to TikTok as well. So, for example, they released a filter called Bold Glamour in early February that can really change your face, and it can actually make it look very real, right? So it uses AI or artificial intelligence to assess users' face and then completely remold it. So it looks as if you got a cosmetic makeover along with some plastic surgery. So this interest in this filter is quite real. It has garnered over 400 million views since initial release. Now, in general, social media has been proven to be associated with self-image problems, especially among girls and teenage girls and young women. And in China, the government has strict controls on the social media usage, right? So they allow only 3 hours on the weekdays. So the Chinese government really clamps down on the social media usage. And due to the growing pressure in the US, TikTok recently announced a 1 hour daily screen time limit for users under 18, but there is an option to turn this off. The other really hot button controversial issue has been data privacy concerning TikTok, because these recommendation algorithms of social media requires hefty data collection. So TikTok, just like other social media applications, they use cookies and trackers to collect user data and their activities and preferences. It's all based on the content they watch. Now, specifically related to the data collection, I've uploaded a PowerPoint that lists all this. So it can collect the user device info. There is an option to collect precise physical location using the GPS. It can collect IP address. In the US, strangely, it's allowed to collect biometric info, including the face ID and the voice prints. So it can obviously track the content you are viewing for how long. It can get the text, images, and videos from the copy to the clipboard. So there are trackers for the advertisers. It can get your contacts list, cookies, keystrokes, search history, whole host of a slew of data collection. Now, the TikTok privacy policy has a lot of details about its vast data collection. It allows third-party trackers to collect data. Now, there is one main concern has been lack of transparency. So it employs a lot of techniques to actually conceal how it functions, right? How the data collection functions. And it's difficult to find out which data is going where. Now, privacy permissions can be set in the privacy settings. It can be accepted or rejected. But turning off these privacy, data collection will limit the functionality of TikTok. For example, you can create private account, but you only approved people can follow you and watch your videos. It really impacts the functionality of this application, right? So a 2022 study by Claes looked into 200 popular apps across various categories on the iOS store, Apple iOS store. So 2 apps collected more data than any others, that is Google and TikTok. Now coming to the Chinese ownership and control, which has been a really controversial subject, right? So it's said that estimated that data is collected from almost 40% of the US population. And ByteDance, the Chinese parent company, employs thousands of Chinese nationals, and they are subject to Chinese laws. Now these Chinese laws mandate their companies to cooperate with Chinese intelligence and security services. Now the Chinese Communist Party, CCP, maintains ownership stake and controlling representation in ByteDance. Now the AI models that are trained using this data collected by ByteDance could be weaponized and turned into a tool for the Chinese national security interest. Now CCP can decide on using this TikTok as a weapon for disinformation campaign targeting US population. Now one of the main concerns has been, like I said earlier, very secretive with surveillance and data collection mechanisms, and also about their relationship with the Chinese government. Now, TikTok's affiliation allegedly with the CCP, the Chinese Communist Party, allows it to push content that's controlled by CCP as opposed to just dictated by the algorithms, right? So this opens up a potential for disinformation campaign. So the worldview of the users can be molded and shaped by the CCP. So that gives them a lot of power and leverage. Now coming to the legal actions and bans, there is a whole host of history behind this. So in 2019, the FTC imposed a $5.7 million fine on ByteDance. And basically it was for collecting information from minors below 13 years in violation of the COPPA, Children's Online Privacy Protection Act. Now in June 2020, the government of India banned several Chinese social media applications, including TikTok, citing the data privacy and national security concerns. And in August of 2020, President Trump issued an executive order declaring TikTok as a threat to the US national security interest and banned this application from use by American businesses. Now, this executive order of Trump was under the International Emergency Economic Powers Act. Now, TikTok then filed a lawsuit against the government, arguing this ban was unconstitutional, and they sought a preliminary injunction to prevent it from going into effect. And in September 2020, a federal judge granted TikTok request for preliminary injunction blocking this ban from going into effect. The US government then appealed this, and in December that year, 2020, another judge granted a motion to stay this preliminary injunction pending the outcome of the appeal, right? So currently 27 US state governments, the federal government and the US House of Representatives, they have all banned TikTok from respective government devices. Now, after the Biden administration took over, in June of 2021, this administration withdrew the Trump's executive order banning the TikTok, and then issued a new executive order directing the Department of Commerce to conduct a review of the security risk posed by Chinese-owned apps. Now, one of the main federal agencies in the center of this investigation that has spent years investigating the national security risk posed by TikTok is the Committee on Foreign Investment in the US, CFIUS. Now, on March 23rd, CEO Shou Chu had a testimony at the US Congress. So he came and testified. He was grilled brutally for over 5 hours. And it was a bipartisan hearing after a long time, right? So he was asked in preparation, for his meeting on this testifying, he consulted any member of the CCP. And apparently he could not outright give a categorically no answer to that. But during the testimony, Mr. Chu stressed their company's independence from China and really emphasized on that all the ties with the US companies and US businesses. He attempts to stress that his company is not an arm of the Chinese government, but it appeared to fall on deaf ears because Washington lawmakers appears to have already reached a conclusion ahead of this testimony. As numerous members of the Congress and lawmakers interrupted his testimony to say that they do not believe him, right? So, especially he faced some pointed statements like Representative McMorris Rodgers saying that to the American people who are watching this testimony, TikTok is a weapon by the Chinese Communist Party to spy on you, manipulate what you see, and exploit for future generations. The lack of content moderation has been a real concern among lawmakers, right? That kids are exposed to content that promotes self-harm. So, for example, Republican Gus Bilrakis of Florida said, "Your technology is literally leading us to death." Now, on this problem of spying and data collection, he said, Mr. Chu said, "We are very committed and to be transparent with our users, and we do not believe that we collect more data than other players in the social media industry." Now, independent researchers have supported Chu's assertions, and in 2020, the Washington Post worked with a privacy research firm to look at the TikTok data collection, and they concluded that TikTok does not collect more data than typical mainstream social media apps. The following year, 2021, a Taiwanese researcher looked at the data collection along with the University of Toronto's Citizen Lab, and they reached similar conclusions that TikTok does not collect more data than other social media apps. Now, even if TikTok collects the same amount of data, right, as Facebook or Twitter, that is still a whole lot of data. That's still a whole lot. Now, it includes the videos watched, content watched, the comments, the likes, the private messages that you sent. It could even be your exact geolocation, contact lists, and so on. Now, Mr. Chu said during the testimony that the current version does not collect the precise geolocation from the users. Now, the Secretary of State Antony Blinken said that TikTok should be ended one way or the other. So there are different ways of doing that. So he was speaking at a separate House Foreign Affairs Committee hearing. But he said it's not sufficient that TikTok be divested from the Chinese parent company. So there has been various statements from the different powers at lawmakers and powers in Washington. So he outright could not say if it should be banned. And he said we are taking steps to address that. Now, coming to the wider issue of social media for surveillance, the problem of spying and data collection is a really real issue, and it must be comprehensively addressed. But there are very legitimate concerns and criticisms of how US government and US intelligence agencies have used surveillance and whether it has overstepped what is legal, right? So the Chinese government has engaged in surveillance and it does not have to turn to courts or a legal process to ensure that it is fair. So there must be a bipartisan consensus and outrage directed at not just Chinese spying and surveillance of Americans, but on the American deep state spying on Americans. Now, it has been revealed through several government hearings congressional hearings that US government conducts elaborate spying operations and surveillance on Americans on social media. But there was no bipartisan consensus on how to deal with it. So Americans need more assurances that these US-based social media companies will not work with the deep state to spy on Americans. So Mr. Chu said we are very committed to be transparent with our users about what we collect, and he does not believe that he collects more data than others in the industry. Now, data privacy issues are applicable to US social media companies as well, according to civil rights agencies like the American Civil Rights Union, ACLU, and the Electronic Freedom Foundation, the EFF. So now when it comes to the US social media platforms like TikTok, Facebook, Google, and Twitter, they collect user data and then sell the data on the open market to data brokers and monetize it. And today there are very few rules or privacy laws regulating that industry. So these civil rights groups believe that this is actually data brokers market is very lucrative, which will continue in spite of a ban on TikTok. So the ban does not address these problems. So that is what they point out. Even if, say, TikTok is banned, Beijing and the Chinese government still can collect information through these data brokers from the open market, and they can gain access to all sorts of information. According to Adam Schwartz, who is the assistant director at the Electronic Freedom Frontier Foundation, or the EFF. Now, one way out for TikTok could be a divestiture from the parent company ByteDance, because for more than 2 years, the CFIUs and TikTok have been negotiating on a possible deal that could address these security concerns and data privacy concerns, and to allow this application to continue operating in the US, right? So one is they'll have to spin out of ByteDance will have to divest any voting rights on this company. So they can maybe hold non-voting rights, and there will be a mandate that the majority shareholders and management oversights should be with American citizens. And the data centers and servers should be moved to the US, should be physically located in the US. The code base should be vetted to make sure there are no backdoors. And the US company should acquire and figure it all out, right? So that'll be the hard part. Is there surreptitiously planned malware? And how much control will actually flow back to the Chinese ownership and the Chinese government? So during this testimony, Mr. Chu was not able to categorically answer a no to all these questions. In that case, it could be heading towards a shutdown or a ban. However, TikTok once said that they will not divest. And from their investors' standpoint of view, this is basically foregoing tens of billions of dollars in revenue, right? They are a viable competitor to Facebook, Instagram Reels. So they are potentially looking at hundreds of billions of dollars of revenue opportunities. Now, the options other than the ban could be, as we all know, data privacy is a wild west here in the US, right, concerning the privacy laws. So coming up with better data privacy, federal data privacy laws could be a better option according to the civil rights groups. It would not only prevent China from collecting data, American user data, but these privacy laws could prevent data breach, address ransomware attacks, and user data from being sold in the open market. So Senator Mark Warner and another senator, they are working on privacy laws called American Data Privacy and Protection Act. Also, they are working on a Restrict Act. So all these are meant to specifically address this problem of data privacy when it comes to TikTok. So it's too early to say if they will actually ban, or will some kind of privacy laws be put in place that could address these issues.